Joining me here live at Kelly's this morning, Jonathan Knapp. He is a candidate for Josephine County Sheriff, and you ended up declaring, was it October, November of last year, and I haven't had a chance to talk to you until this time. I'm glad you showed up this morning, Jonathan. Welcome to the show.
Well, good morning, Bill. Thanks for having me.
Tell me a little bit about your background, because you were born in Bandon, and you did your growing up mostly in Grants Pass, but your law enforcement experience mostly in Maricopa County, Arizona, right?
Correct. Yeah, after I graduated Hidden Valley High School, I joined the United States Air Force. After a short time there in another career, I went to the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office in Phoenix, Arizona, and I worked there for 18 years, 14 years of that as a sergeant.
Okay, great. And why did you end up leaving or retiring? What's the story? And why do we have you back home, other than the fact you probably like the area? Because that's the way I would look at it.
Yeah, I love the area. It was always my intention to come back home. So last year I got the time on that I needed to retire. We scheduled the retirement in conjunction with the filing. To file to run for office in Oregon, you have to be a resident for 1 year prior to the election. The election is in November of 18, so I had to be a resident in November of 17, so I expired the end of October.
Okay, good. All right, so you ended up working with Sheriff Joe.
Yes,
right?
I did.
Sheriff Joe. So how many years did you work with him? I think he was a sheriff there in Maricopa, long time. Yeah,
I spent except for the last year, I spent the entire career working for Sheriff Joe. He was sheriff for 24 years.
Now, when you're coming here and you're talking about Sheriff Joe, I guess it depends on your opinion of his methods and things like that, whether or not you think that's necessarily a good thing or a bad thing, right? Fair enough?
That's right. People I run into, it's a love-hate relationship. They either love the sheriff or they hate the sheriff. But the citizens loved him enough to elect him to be sheriff for 24 years.
All right. So is it? Do you think that his law enforcement, or shall I say, perhaps, I think he was probably most controversial over jail conditioning and the pink underwear and all that kind of stuff that he was doing. Is that something that you're kind of taking to heart, or what is your take on what the chief law enforcement officer of a county should be?
Well, a lot of things that he did was a PR stunt. The pink underwear. The pink underwear was so that inmates wouldn't steal the underwear when they left, and that saved the taxpayers money. So he dyed all the white boxers pink so that they wouldn't steal them to save money.
Yeah, because no self-respecting guy wants to steal pink underwear.
That's right.
Just kind of the way it went. Okay.
That's right.
All right.
So I'm all about saving money. I don't know that I would dye the underwear pink, but when you have 10,000 inmates and 10,000 pairs of boxers and underwear, and if you're having to replace all of those every month, you can see that that's a big fiscal responsibility.
How big was the jail there that you had?
10,000.
10,000. Boy, that's a lot of beds. It's a lot of people. That's
spread out over 5 jails, including the infamous Tent City.
Yeah, it's interesting that that today, of all days, you end up coming in, because the day before, Jackson County ends up announcing that, we'd like a new jail. And for a county of 212,000 at last count, they're talking about 1,000 jail bed, and roughly speaking, $100 million in construction and operating costs in a levy to do something like this. It's a lot of money. And what I'm kind of curious about is, first off, in your view, I don't know if the math works or not, 1,000 beds for 212,000. Is that about the right number when you think about it percentage-wise? Is there like a standard percentage of the population that you say that, okay, you have so many people, we're going to need so many jail beds? Is there some kind of formula for that?
There really isn't a formula, and a lot of it depends on whether it's city populace or county populace. In Josephine County, for example, we're 50-50. 50% of our residents live in the city. Well, if you have a large city police agency, Central Point, the city of Medford, and they make a lot of arrests, if they're arrest-driven,
they do,
then the jail has to be large to accommodate their arrests. If you have an agency that's not making a lot of arrests, then you don't need that many beds.
So, as an example, many rural county sheriffs, as an example, may make fewer arrests than an urban city police force, right?
Correct. I've traveled all over the country doing extraditions of prisoners, and I'll go into a county that'll have a 2-bed jail. And for them, that's sufficient. That's
it sounds like the old Andy Griffith Show, doesn't it?
That's exactly what it's like.
All right. Did they give the key to the drunk? No, just kidding.
They send him out to McDonald's to get his own dinner and hope he comes back.
Exactly. So about saving money, why do you want to be sheriff of Josephine County?
I love law enforcement, and I love Josephine County. So the two of them go together. I grew up here. My family lives here. My parents live here. I have a sister that still lives here. I have land here, a house here. I have no desire to cut ties to Josephine County, but I'm still too young to retire and do absolutely nothing. So I want to capitalize on my strengths, and my strengths are in law enforcement and administration. I have 30 years experience as a supervisor, as an administrator, as a manager. That's what I can bring to the sheriff's office that they don't currently have.
What do you think they can do, or that you can do or bring to it better than the incumbent? You have the experience, but it's like, there's experience, but, what would you actually do differently? And from the outside, maybe you don't know everything about what's going on the inside, but you probably have a few thoughts on it.
Running a sheriff's office is different than running a city law enforcement agency. And a lot of people don't realize the differences in running a county agency and running a city agency. I have 18 years experience working with a county agency. One riot, one ranger, knowing that you're going to go out there by yourself, whether it's Wolf Creek or Cave Junction or Williams, and you're going to handle the situation. Your backup may not come, or if your backup comes, your backup may be 10, 15, 20 minutes away.
Yeah, OSP call could be a long wait, right?
Could be a long wait. Mm-hmm. And as a sheriff's employee, you have the mentality to deal with that. So I've learned over the years how to handle situations in the county and how to treat people in the county and how to de-escalate a situation and how to be a business manager. The sheriff's office is a business. It needs to be run, fiscal responsibility. You need policies and procedures. You need relationships with the other entities that you work with, whether it's the BLM, Forestry Department, the Grants Pass City Police Department, the county commissioners.
Are we run efficiently right now, in your professional opinion?
I don't think so. We passed a levy, and the levy is great on the jail side, but there were other things that we could have done with the jail. Finding money for patrol is the difficult side.
That seems to be the big bugaboo, because it was also one of the reasons why many rural Josephine County residents would call me up and say, hey, here it is, I'm over in Selma, Murphy, some other place like that, and the sheriff's officers weren't showing up before, and they're not going to be showing up now. At least that was the way they would view it, and they would tend to vote no on public safety levies for this reason. Of course, there was enough of a hue and cry that finally, you ended up getting one passed. How do you find the room in the budget then for patrols? Because that's what really, I think, the boots on the ground is what people in rural counties are really looking for.
Well, the jail levy, even though it wouldn't have been the way I would have presented it, did benefit the sheriff's office in that the funds that the sheriff's office was funding the entire operation are now set aside to the patrol side. Mm-hmm. The $7 million levy for the jail will now operate the jail. So the $4 million, $6 million that the sheriff's office had before the levy can now move over to the patrol side, and that's why the sheriff's been able to hire 20 employees.
A good thing.
So we'll get patrol out there. It's just going to take a while, and I think I heard Lily say it takes a while to get through training, to get through the academy, to get the people out on the street. So that is going to come.
Does state certification make it more difficult then to man these counties like she was talking about? There, if you're out for 4 years, you lose your certification. It's like, wow, what a waste, I thought.
And I agree with that. Most states, and I'll work with Oregon as I become sheriff to resolve that issue, because in most states, Maricopa County, we had a large reserve officer force. Reserve officers are retired officers or people that have gone through the certification but loved their regular day job.
Do we have a large reserve force in Josephine County to fill in when we need it?
We don't have a large reserve force currently, but I've been contacted by lots of former law enforcement officers that want to join the reserves. And so we need to work with Oregon State so that they can keep their certification but be a volunteer. Right now, they have to be paid to keep their certification, and that's why after 4 years of not drawing a salary, you lose your certification.
Oh, you have to be paid. You have to do it. So it's not a matter of if you have the skills, but you have to be paid for having the skills.
That's right. You
can't
volunteer to keep it, and so I want to change that. I want to work with DPSST to change that if a person is certified They can volunteer with the agency, and as long as they keep their training and their proficiencies up to date, they can keep their status.
We're speaking with Jonathan Knapp, and he is a candidate for Josephine County Sheriff. Of course, the big primary coming up. Is it one of those things where you and the incumbent duke it out, and if one of you wins big time in May, you become the sheriff, or is it just you're still going to move forward to a general election?
No, in Oregon, you'll only have a primary if you have more than 2 candidates. Mm-hmm. So if a third person were to file to run, we would have a primary, and the top 2 would move on to November unless one of those top 2 gets 51% of the vote, or 50% plus 1 is what it's written.
Okay, got it. That's the way it's working. Okay, so this is going to be quite the dogfight then, coming up the next couple of weeks, or a couple of months, right?
Couple of months.
All right, we'll be right back here with Jonathan Knapp. If you have a question for him, 770-5633. This is the Bill Meyer Show. We're live in Grants Pass at Kelly's Automotive, 1661 6th in Grants Pass on KMED and KCMD. It's 8:27. We're live in Grants Pass, and speaking with Jonathan Knapp. He's Josephine County Sheriff's candidate for this year. In fact, the big dogfight coming up in May, and we'll see who's going to be the next. You could be the next sheriff. You never know. And you were talking about how it's good to be able to get along as a sheriff. You have to be able to get along with all these various agencies. Would it be Jackson County, the sheriff's department, the police departments of the various agencies, Josephine County, Grants Pass, et cetera, et cetera. Now, this, I know, it's kind of springing it on you because the $100 million jail announcement just sort of came yesterday, and so we're kind of digging through the numbers right now. I guess a question would be here, what are the logistics involved if we were to lease some beds from Josephine County, speaking of Jackson County, rather than going the $100 million method right now? What are your thoughts on that?
You're asking about Medford bringing people over to Josephine County?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that they did it, and I think Lily mentioned it, and I'd heard it on the radio, that they leased beds or rented beds during the music festival. The Josephine County Jail was built out for 262 jail beds. We typically have been running 120, 150. So we've got 100 beds that we could rent out to Jackson County if they wanted to take advantage of that.
Is there a possibility of more if there were additional personnel hired to end up helping out?
Well, 262 is the maximum capacity that our jail is built out
Is
for.
that with the double-deckers that
Yes.
Lily was referencing?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So that's about it, though. What is another way, and I'm just truly speculating, because when I see $100 million bond levy possibly coming at taxpayers, and you see the media that is greasing the skids, look at all the women in jail, etc., you can feel there's almost an agenda that's being pushed. And I just want to look out for the taxpayers. What are alternatives in your view? And I know you're just speculating, that could be done rather than just building a new $100 million jail, because we need more beds in Jackson County. And I know here it is, you're running for Josephine County, but we are tied at the hip here in Southern Oregon, right?
Yeah, there are several options that are available, and I don't know Jackson County. I don't know Jackson County politics. Cities can build jails, so Central Point could build a jail. The city of Medford could build a jail. Jackson County could retrofit their jail, but I don't know how old their jail is. I've been there once, and it's pretty old and pretty run down.
I'm told that it was obsolete the day they opened it, is what I'm told, because it wasn't done in the pod style.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's like the city of Grants Pass has a jail, but it'll never be used as a jail again because it is just so old and so obsolete. Maricopa County had a jail. We called it our First Avenue jail because it was on First Avenue, and it was what they say is condemned years and years ago. We retrofitted parts of it and use it for animals and things like that. But once a jail wears out its usefulness, you really can't put it back into use.
So they really do have a lifespan then. It's
Yes.
not like a home where you can just fix it up and put a little fresh paint on it. And
That's correct.
okay, well, that's making it sound more expensive all the time.
Yeah. And unfortunately, even here in Josephine County, the day will come when the jail that we have built becomes obsolete, and we have to look at replacing it.
Don't say that. Don't tell them.
Yeah.
They don't know. All right.
Years from now.
All right. That's good. Okay. We're safe for the time being. 8:30, Bill Meyer, and we're with Jonathan Knapp. He's a Josephine County Sheriff candidate. And David is in Central Point. David, you got a question or comment? Go right ahead. Let's hear it.
Yeah, I'm just curious, because it seems like a budget issue. Does the candidate believe that the jail should have to, or maybe even the sheriff's department themselves, should they have to publicize the settlement amounts when people are injured in jail, or occasionally on, I know in Jackson County years ago, I've heard about wrongful death suits that are settled court. I mean, are those numbers relevant when we're talking about budgets and what it costs to run a jail?
That's a really interesting question because Jackson has had, some wrongful death settlements, and it tends to be kept very quiet. Good question. What do you think about that?
Well, I think in a lot of cases it's up to the legal department. There's a lot of disclosures or notices that are signed where sometimes the parties agree not to disclose the amount. So as a sheriff, I'm not going to be able to say a lawsuit was settled for this amount. But he had said something that drifted in and out really, really quick, and unfortunately I missed it.
The question that that would arise with me is that secret settlements makes it very difficult to hold an elected sheriff accountable if no one even knows that there's a problem or that there was a problem.
Yes, and then I remember the other thing that floated in and out is counties, municipalities have insurance. Now, we don't want to use it, but when you have a multi-million-dollar lawsuit, in most cases, those are paid for out of the insurance. So it doesn't actually come out of the sheriff's office or the county budget. But the insurance premiums that we pay will, in fact, go up. That's inevitable. And you claim an auto accident claim, your insurance is going to go up the next year.
And, of course, many municipalities self-insure. I'm not sure if Jackson County was self-insuring at that time or not for those wrongful deaths. But what has concerned me is that everybody in the know knows what happens behind the scene, but the voters and the people don't really have any idea. They're thinking, they look at the newspaper, everything seems fine, that sort of thing.
And that should be disclosed. The voters should know that they have a right to know that Josephine County or Jackson County, since we're talking about them, had X number of lawsuits this year, and those lawsuits were settled for X number of dollars. They do have a right to know that because that goes to show how responsible, in this case we're talking sheriff's office, how responsible is your sheriff's office? Are they taking care of the people in the jail, or are they running it rogue and letting things happen that are costing the taxpayers money?
All right. We're speaking this morning with, once again, Jonathan Knapp. He's Josephine County Sheriff's candidate. Robin's in Grants Pass. Robin, you have a question here. Go ahead.
Hey, hi there. Mr. Knapp, I got a couple questions for you. First of all, I'd like to know how you feel about the Second Amendment, and also how do you feel about sanctuary cities? That's what I have to ask you.
Couple of good questions here. A lot of people talking about that, Robin. What do you say?
Two great questions. First of all, Second Amendment. That's an easy one for me. I'm a member of the Constitutional Sheriff's Association. When I joined the Air Force, I raised my hand and swore to take an oath to defend the Constitution, foreign and domestic. When I signed on with the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office, I raised my hand and took the oath. And when I'm elected as sheriff, I'll raise my hand again and take the oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States. So the Second Amendment is there, and it's firm, and it's fast, and it's not going anywhere. So that's where I stand.
Okay. And go ahead, Robin.
And I was going to say, and so you're definitely a supporter of those of us that are concealed carry, and you wouldn't stand in the way of us, getting our concealed carry licenses.
Oh, no, absolutely not. I will encourage as many people that want to get concealed carry. I've had an Oregon concealed carry since the mid-'90s. So. Hey,
Robin, thanks for the call. Really appreciate that here on the Bill Meyer Show. And let me just ask, the other question, sanctuary cities. It's kind of a state issue. I know that they are working to try to get a citizen initiative to get rid of Oregon's sanctuary city status. Is there a way to be more cooperative with ICE, let's say, without running afoul of existing sanctuary city law?
The government used to have a program called 287G, and that's a U.S. code, 287G, and ICE trained local law enforcement officers to become ICE officers, and I actually went through that course and was a certified ICE officer for a few years while that program still existed. President Obama eliminated the program, and we lost our certification, but we were allowed to enforce immigration law. Now, in Oregon, we're a sanctuary state currently, so no officer can enforce any immigration law.
Period. Okay.
That's administrative law. But as the sheriff, we can enforce the criminal laws, the laws of the state of Oregon and of Josephine County. So if an immigrant, an illegal alien, an undocumented alien, whatever we want to call that group, commits a crime in Josephine County, we can take them to jail on the crime. We can inform ICE that that person is here, and when they are done with their Josephine County criminal business, then ICE can take them and move them through that administrative process.
So in other words, being a thorough law enforcement officer takes care of a lot of that issue.
Correct.
Okay, got it. Time for one quick question here from Dawn. I'm just running a little bit late. Help me out here, Dawn. Good question. Let's hear it.
Well, I'm going to ask you to help me. Okay, this initiative for a new jail here in Jackson County.
By the way, it's just a proposal. Just a proposal.
Well, okay. But if it goes through, is this going to be laid only on the backs of people that live in Medford, or is this county voters that are going to vote on it? All county. It
would be countywide, my friend. Thank you very much, okay?
Oh, okay.
All right. So it would certainly be spread. The pain would be spread just on basis on what your property is all about. And all right, we appreciate that. Final take here, and how can people find out more about you, Jonathan Knapp? Get to your website, Facebook page, whatever else, and if they wanted to support your candidacy.
Well, I do have a Facebook page. I also have a website, www.knappforsheriff. You can spell it out or use the number, knappforsheriff.com.
And that's Knapp.
That is correct.
All right, very good. Good meeting you. Thanks for coming in today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
FM 106.7, AM 1440, KMED.